The late afternoon sun painted the sky in soft shades of gold and orange as Rebecca sat on the wooden stool by the window of her small room. A faint breeze slipped through the half-open shutters, brushing against her cheeks. She had been working all day, her fingers dancing over the fabric spread across her old sewing machine, but instead of fatigue, there was a sparkle in her eyes. Welcome to Sarah Wood's Tale. Where stories comes alive, please do well to hit that subscription button and turn on your notification bell for subsequent stories. Every stitch meant something. Every thread she pulled tighter was a reminder of how far she had come. Her life wasn't easy, anyone could see that from the cracked walls of her family's little house and the patched-up chairs in the living room. But inside Rebecca's heart, there was a fire. She had a dream that one day her designs would walk the runways of Lagos, Abuja, even London or New York. She had been saving for years, denying herself new clothes, fine food, and even small pleasures, just to put every little coin aside for her fashion business. Her hands trembled slightly as she held up the dress she had just finished. It was a simple gown, made from blue fabric she had bought at a discount, but it had her signature touch, delicate embroidery along the neckline. She smiled softly. At that moment, her best friend Felicia burst into the room without knocking. "Rebecca," Felicia said, her voice carrying both excitement and a touch of impatience. She was tall, fair-skinned, and always dressed in the latest fashion, even though she barely earned much at her own office job. Somehow, Felicia always knew how to appear polished. Rebecca looked up, smiling. "Felicia, you scared me. You should at least knock." Felicia waved her hand carelessly and walked over to the dress on the mannequin. "Wow, Becca, this is lovely. Honestly, you were born to do this. I keep telling you, one day you'll own your own fashion line." Rebecca blushed, her smile widening. "That's the plan, Feli. I just need to be patient. My savings are almost enough. Soon I'll register my business officially." Felicia's lips curved into a smile, but there was something sharp in her eyes that Rebecca, in her innocence, didn't notice. "Almost enough?" Felicia asked, tilting her head. "So how much have you managed to save now?" Rebecca hesitated. She trusted Felicia with almost everything after all. They had been friends since secondary school. But still, something inside her whispered that maybe she shouldn't reveal too much. She shook the thought away quickly. "Well, let's just say it's more than I ever thought I could save in this lifetime," Rebecca replied with a laugh. "Enough to start the business small, at least. You know I've been keeping it safe in that account." Felicia nodded slowly, pretending to be impressed. "That's really good, Becca. I'm proud of you." Rebecca turned her attention back to the dress, adjusting the hem. "I can't wait. My own shop, my own label, and with Timothy by my side, cheering me on, I feel unstoppable." The mention of Timothy made Felicia's smile tighten. She quickly masked it by clapping her hands together. "Speaking of Timothy, how's the wedding planning? It's just a few weeks away now, right?" Rebecca's face glowed. She rested her hand on her chest as if just the thought warmed her heart. "Yes, in 3 weeks. Sometimes I still can't believe it. He's been so supportive, Feli. He believes in me even when I doubt myself. He says once I launch my business, he'll help me expand it." Felicia forced a laugh. "Wow, Timothy is a good man. You're lucky." Rebecca turned to look at her best friend, her eyes shining with sincerity. "Not just lucky. Blessed. I keep asking myself how I got so much love, you as my best friend and Timothy as my fiancé. I really don't deserve this." Felicia smiled again, but deep inside, envy twisted her heart. For years, she had secretly admired Timothy. She had been the one to introduce him to Rebecca at a friend's birthday party, never imagining they would fall in love. Watching them together now felt like being stabbed repeatedly, yet she smiled and pretended to be happy. "Don't say you don't deserve it, Becca," Felicia said smoothly. "You deserve the world. And I'll always be here to support you. You know that, right?" Rebecca's heart softened. She reached out and squeezed Felicia's hand. "I know. You're my sister." That evening, Timothy came to visit. Rebecca rushed out of her room when she heard his familiar knock at the door. He was tall, with gentle eyes and a charming smile that could melt even the coldest heart. He carried a bag of fruit in one hand. "Good evening, my love," Timothy greeted, his voice warm. Rebecca's heart fluttered. "You came." "Of course," Timothy said, handing her the bag. "I brought you some fruit. You work too hard, you need strength." Rebecca laughed softly, taking the bag. "Thank you. You spoil me too much." Felicia, who had stayed longer than usual, watched the exchange quietly, her face neutral. Timothy greeted her politely. "Ah, Felicia. You're here too. How are you?" "I'm fine," Felicia replied, her tone light. "Just keeping your fiancé company." Timothy smiled, then turned back to Rebecca. "So, how is my designer queen? Still sewing late into the night?" Rebecca blushed. "You know me. I want everything to be perfect." Timothy reached out and held her hand. "And it will be, because you're the one doing it. I can't wait to see your name in lights one day." Rebecca's heart swelled with love. She looked at him like he was the best gift God had ever given her. Felicia excused herself soon after, but her smile lingered bitterly as she walked away into the night. In her mind, she thought, Rebecca has everything. The dream, the man, the savings. But what about me? Later that night, Rebecca sat at her sewing machine, humming to herself, while Timothy leaned against the wall, watching her with admiration. "You amaze me, Becca," he said softly. She glanced at him. "Why?" "Because you've been through so much, yet you still smile. You still dream. That's rare." Rebecca stopped sewing, her eyes glistening. "Timothy, sometimes I'm scared. What if I fail? What if I lose everything I've saved? What if?" Timothy interrupted her gently, pressing a finger to her lips. "Shush, don't think like that. I'm here. We'll face it together. You won't fail." Tears welled in Rebecca's eyes. "You really mean that?" "Of course. I love you, Rebecca. And after our wedding, I'll prove to you every single day that I'm your partner in everything." Rebecca smiled through her tears. "I love you too, Timothy. With all my heart." She believed him. Every word. She believed Felicia too, when her best friend called her sister. She believed she was living in the perfect dream, a supportive best friend, a loving fiancé, and a future bright with promise. But dreams, as beautiful as they may be, are fragile. And sometimes, the people you trust the most are the ones who crush them. Rebecca had always thought heartbreak would feel like a sharp stab in the chest, something that would make her scream or faint. But the pain she felt after Felicia and Timothy's betrayal was nothing like that. It was heavier. It was like carrying a stone inside her chest, one that pressed against her lungs every second, making it hard to breathe. Every morning, when she woke up, the stone was still there. She stayed in her room most of the time now, curtains drawn shut, sewing machine pushed aside. The once bright girl who dreamed of a fashion empire was gone. Her hair, usually styled neatly, became rough and unkempt. Her eyes carried shadows from endless nights of crying. The neighbors whispered when she passed by to fetch water. "Ah, poor Rebecca," one woman said to another, shaking her head. "Her friend ran away with her fiancé." "Yes," the other replied with mock pity. "That's why you don't trust people too much. I heard the man took all her savings too." Rebecca heard every word, though they spoke as if she wasn't there. She lowered her head, ashamed. Her steps grew slower. Each day felt like a punishment. She barely ate. Sometimes she sat by the corner of her bed, staring at the wall for hours, unable to think of anything except the betrayal. Felicia, her sister in spirit, the one she trusted with everything. Timothy, the man who had sworn love to her, who once held her hand and promised never to let go. Together, they had taken not just her money and her dreams, but the little light in her heart. One evening, Rebecca's younger cousin, Hannah, came to visit. Hannah was just 19, full of energy and hope. She admired Rebecca greatly and often told her she wanted to be like her someday. But what she found broke her heart. Rebecca was sitting in the dark, her face streaked with dried tears. The room smelled faintly of sweat and neglect. "Sister Rebecca," Hannah said softly, stepping closer. "You're sitting in darkness. At least open the window. Let some fresh air in." Rebecca didn't answer. She simply stared at the floor. Hannah swallowed hard. She had never seen her cousin like this before. She sat down on the edge of the bed, her voice trembling but firm. I know you don't want to hear anything, but I must talk. Sister, you can't continue like this. You are more than what they did to you. Rebecca finally turned to look at her, her eyes dull and lifeless. More. Hannah, I lost everything. My money, my fiancé, my dignity. People laugh at me when I pass. Do you know what that feels like? Yes, I know they mock you, Hannah said, tears forming in her own eyes. But that doesn't mean you are finished. They betrayed you, but God didn't. You still have breath. You still have your hands, your talent, your dream. They can't take that away. Rebecca shook her head slowly. I can't start again. I don't have the strength. Hannah leaned forward and grabbed her hand. Then borrow strength from me. I believe in you. I believe the world hasn't seen the best of Rebecca yet. Don't let them win. Don't let Felicia and Timothy laugh over your tears. Rebecca's lips trembled. She pulled her hand away and stood up, walking toward the mirror on the wall. She hadn't looked at herself properly in weeks. The reflection staring back was shocking, swollen eyes, messy hair, pale skin. She looked nothing like the woman she used to be. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, Is this me? Is this the woman who once had dreams? Who believed she could conquer the world? Hannah stood behind her, her voice quiet but firm. That woman is still here. She's just hiding. She needs to stand up again. Rebecca pressed her palms against the mirror, crying harder. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, with a broken voice, she whispered, I won't remain a victim. I won't let this be the end of my story. Hannah hugged her tightly from behind, sobbing with her. That's the Rebecca I know. Don't give up, sister. Please don't. That night, for the first time in weeks, Rebecca prayed. Her words were simple, just a broken plea. God, help me. Give me strength to rise again. The next morning, Rebecca opened the window and let the sunlight in. Dust particles danced in the golden rays, and though her heart still felt heavy, there was a new determination deep inside. She didn't know how yet. She didn't know when. But she promised herself she would not remain in the ashes. Her life would not end in betrayal. The decision to leave home was not easy for Rebecca. She loved her family, and she loved her little town despite the whispers and gossip that cut like knives. But every street reminded her of Timothy and Felicia. Every corner carried shadows of shame. So one morning, before the sun rose fully, she packed a small bag. Inside it were a few dresses, some thread and needles, and the gift Hannah had insisted on giving her, a second-hand sewing machine. Hannah hugged her tightly before she left. Sister Rebecca, she whispered, this machine is small, but I know your hands will make it great. Please don't forget us when you succeed. Rebecca smiled weakly, her eyes glassy with tears. I'll never forget. You gave me hope when I had none. That's something I'll carry forever. With that, she boarded a bus to a city far away, carrying nothing but pain, determination, and a fragile dream. The city was loud, crowded, and overwhelming. Rebecca stepped off the bus and was greeted by the sounds of car horns, hawkers shouting their goods, and children weaving between traffic. She felt small, almost invisible, but she reminded herself why she had come. She found a small, dusty one-room apartment in the poorer part of the city. The walls were cracked, the window was tiny, and the roof leaked when it rained. The floor was hard concrete, and there was no fan to cool her during hot nights. Still, she set her sewing machine in the corner, arranging it like a sacred altar. This is where I'll start again, she whispered to herself. The first few weeks were brutal. She went from house to house, asking if anyone needed clothes mended. Some slammed the door in her face. Others mocked her. Tailor. We already have many tailors here. Who do you think you are? One woman scoffed. Another laughed outright. Go back to your village. People here don't have time for dreamers. Rebecca would return to her room each night, exhausted and humiliated, her belly empty because she couldn't afford more than a piece of bread. But each morning, she pushed herself to try again. Finally, one old woman agreed to let Rebecca adjust a torn wrapper. Rebecca worked on it all night, her fingers careful and precise. When she returned it the next day, the old woman gasped. "You sewed this? Ah, you have a gift, my daughter. You put life back into old cloth." The woman gave her a small basket of food instead of money. Rebecca accepted it with tears in her eyes. That basket fed her for 3 days. Slowly, word spread in the neighborhood about the young woman who worked with love and care. More small jobs came, mending school uniforms, sewing pillowcases, fixing zippers. The pay was tiny, sometimes no more than a few coins, but Rebecca treated each job as if it was the most important. When she was alone, she whispered to herself, "This is not forever. This is just the beginning." Not everyone appreciated her. Some tried to take advantage of her desperation. One woman brought a pile of clothes and promised to pay later. Rebecca worked tirelessly, but when she delivered them, the woman sneered. "I don't like this work. I won't pay." Rebecca's chest tightened. "But Ma, I stayed up all night." The woman cut her off. "Are you deaf? Leave my house before I call the police." Rebecca left, tears burning her eyes. That night, she sat by her sewing machine, her stomach growling, asking herself if she had made a mistake by leaving home. Another time, a group of young women passing by her room laughed when they saw her sewing late at night. "Look at her," one said, giggling. "She thinks she'll become a fashion queen in this slum. Poor thing." The laughter echoed in Rebecca's ears long after they were gone. But instead of giving up, she whispered to herself, "Laugh now. One day, you'll wear my designs." While Rebecca fought to survive in her tiny room, Timothy and Felicia were living large. With Rebecca's stolen savings, they rented a luxurious apartment in the city. Felicia flaunted new clothes and jewelry on social media, posting pictures with captions like, "Living the life I deserve, Sparkles dancer." Timothy, though not as flashy, enjoyed the comfort. But cracks soon began to show. One night, as they sat at a fancy restaurant, Felicia scrolled through her phone with a scowl. "Timothy, the money is reducing too fast. Why do you keep spending on unnecessary things?" Timothy frowned. "And you? Do you think all those clothes you buy are free? Don't talk to me like I'm a child." Felicia rolled her eyes. "If you had sense, you'd be making more money by now instead of living off what we took from Rebecca." At the mention of Rebecca's name, Timothy shifted uncomfortably. "Don't say her name. I don't want to hear it." Felicia leaned back, her eyes sharp. "Why? Do you feel guilty?" Timothy's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. That night, for the first time, Felicia wondered if she had tied herself to a sinking ship. But pride wouldn't let her admit it. Back in her one-room apartment, Rebecca's determination began to bear small fruit. One afternoon, a young mother came to her with a request. "I heard you're good," the woman said, holding a small piece of Ankara fabric. "Can you make a simple dress for my daughter's birthday? We can't pay much." Rebecca smiled. "I'll do it. Just tell me how you want it." She poured her heart into the dress, adding tiny details along the sleeves. When the little girl wore it on her birthday, the neighborhood mothers couldn't stop asking where the dress came from. Soon, more requests followed. A wedding guest needed a gown. A church choir wanted matching uniforms. Rebecca worked day and night, sometimes forgetting to eat, but each satisfied customer brought her a step closer to rebuilding her dream. One night, after finishing a particularly beautiful gown, she sat back and looked at her sewing machine. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time, they weren't from sadness. "Thank you, Hannah," she whispered. "This machine is my second chance." Still, life was far from easy. Rebecca often went hungry, surviving on Gary soaked in water. Her hands were blistered from long hours of sewing. Sometimes, electricity would go out for days, forcing her to sew by candlelight. Yet, in the middle of her struggles, she felt something growing inside her, a fire stronger than the betrayal, stronger than the pain. One night, she stood in her tiny room, staring at the leaking roof. Rainwater dripped into a bucket, each drop echoing in the silence. Rebecca clenched her fists and whispered, "I may be poor now. I may be mocked. But I will not stay here forever. Felicia and Timothy think they destroyed me, but they only gave me fuel. One day, they'll see me again and they won't believe their eyes." Her voice trembled, but her resolve was firm. The road she had chosen was not easy, but it was hers. The road less traveled. And on that road, she was slowly, painfully, but surely building the foundation of an empire. Rebecca was sitting at her sewing machine one hot afternoon, sweat running down her back as she adjusted the hem of a dress for a customer. The tiny room she worked in was filled with scraps of fabric, spools of thread, and patterns sketched on worn paper. She was tired, she hadn't eaten since morning, but she kept pushing herself. Just then, a knock came at the door. "Who is it?" she asked, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. "It's me, Mrs. Okafor," came the familiar voice of one of her loyal customers. Rebecca opened the door, and in stepped the cheerful woman with a wide smile. Behind her was a tall, well-dressed man in a crisp shirt and neatly ironed trousers. His wristwatch gleamed, and his shoes shone. "Rebecca," Mrs. Okafor said warmly, "this is my cousin, Fred. He's visiting from Abuja. I've told him about you, the young lady who works miracles with needle and thread." Rebecca felt suddenly self-conscious in her faded dress and tired face. She smiled shyly. "Good afternoon, sir." Fred studied the room, small, cramped, and poorly lit, then looked at the dress Rebecca was working on. His eyebrows lifted slightly. "You made this?" Rebecca nodded. "Yes, sir. I make clothes, gowns, and sometimes simple uniforms." Fred stepped closer, touching the fabric carefully. "This stitching, it's neat, strong, and creative. You have a gift." Rebecca's cheeks warmed. "Thank you, sir." Mrs. Okafor clapped her hands together. "Didn't I tell you, Fred? She's talented, but she's wasting away in this tiny room." Fred smiled faintly, then looked directly at Rebecca. "Why are you still here? Why not open a proper boutique? People would pay well for work like this." Rebecca's heart clenched. She laughed sadly. "Sir, dreams are expensive. I barely make enough to feed myself. A boutique is far away for me." Fred studied her silently for a moment. His eyes were sharp but kind. "I don't believe that. The problem is not that your dream is far, it's that you're thinking too small." Rebecca blinked at him, surprised. "Too small?" "Yes," Fred said firmly. "You see yourself as a local tailor when you should see yourself as a designer. You don't just mend clothes, you create beauty. People will pay for that. But only if you dare to think bigger." Rebecca felt tears sting her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not even Timothy had pushed her like this. She looked down, fiddling with a thread between her fingers. I don't know if I can." Fred's voice softened. "You can. You just need someone to believe in you. And I do." Over the next few days, Fred visited again. He asked to see more of Rebecca's sketches. She hesitated at first, but when she finally showed him, his eyes widened. "These are brilliant," he said. "Where did you learn to draw like this?" Rebecca shrugged shyly. "Nowhere. I just imagine dresses in my head and try to put them on paper." Fred leaned back, nodding. "Rebecca, these are not just dresses. These are designs. You have the vision of a true fashion creator." Something stirred in Rebecca's chest. It was the same fire she had thought Felicia and Timothy had stolen. Now, Fred's words fanned it back to life. A week later, Fred surprised her. "I've found a small shop space in the market," he told her. "It's not big, but it's better than this one room. I'll help you pay the first rent. The rest will be up to you. What do you think?" Rebecca's mouth fell open. "You do that, for me?" Fred smiled. "I don't give charity. I invest in potential. You have something special, Rebecca. Let's show the world." Tears filled her eyes. She clasped her hands together. "Thank you, sir. I won't waste this chance. I promise." Becca's touch. The shop was small, with plain white walls and a creaky wooden door, but to Rebecca, it felt like a palace. She painted the walls herself, with Hannah's help, and put up a simple signboard. Becca's touch. When she stood outside that day, looking at the sign with her name on it, tears streamed down her face. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. The early days were hard. Customers passed by, curious but skeptical. Some wrinkled their noses. A boutique. Here. From this girl, one woman muttered. Another laughed. We'll see how long it lasts. Rebecca held her head high. She sat at her sewing machine every day, creating new designs and displaying them in the window. Slowly, a few people began to take notice. One afternoon, a young bride-to-be entered the shop. She was shy and clearly from a humble family. Please, she said softly, I heard you make good dresses. But I don't have much money. Could you make me something simple for my wedding? Rebecca's heart melted. She smiled warmly. Don't worry. Sit down. Tell me how you want it. The girl hesitated. Something beautiful, but not expensive. Just something that will make me feel special. Rebecca nodded, her mind already racing. Leave it to me. For 2 weeks, she worked tirelessly, putting every bit of love and creativity into the dress. She stayed up late, adding delicate embroidery by hand, stitching lace along the edges, and making sure every detail was perfect. When the bride returned and tried it on, she gasped, tears filling her eyes. It's more beautiful than I ever dreamed. Rebecca smiled through her own tears. Every bride deserves to feel special. On the wedding day, pictures of the bride in the dress spread quickly on social media. People couldn't believe such a stunning gown had come from a tiny boutique called Becca's Touch. Comments poured in. Who is the designer? This dress looks like it came from Paris. I need her contact. Within a week, Rebecca's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Orders came flooding in, not just from her city but from other states. Becca's Touch had gone from a struggling boutique to a name on everyone's lips. One evening, as Rebecca closed the shop after a long day, Fred came by. He leaned against the doorway, watching her with a proud smile. You see, he said. I told you the world would notice. Rebecca laughed, shaking her head. I still can't believe it. Just last month, I was sewing in a dark little room. Now, look at this. Within days, rumors began to spread. Some people whispered that Rebecca was only successful because of rich men. Others muttered that she had betrayed friends to climb higher. When the rumors reached Rebecca's ears, her heart sank. She knew exactly who was behind them. One evening, she sat with Hannah, scrolling through nasty comments online. They say I used men, that I'm fake, Rebecca whispered, her voice breaking. After everything I've built with my own hands, is this how people see me? Hannah squeezed her hand firmly. Sister, don't let their lies shake you. Those who know your story know the truth. Felicia is just bitter because she sees you shining where she thought you would fall. Rebecca wiped her tears. It still hurts. I tried so hard to rise above the ashes, and now the past is trying to drag me back. Hannah's eyes burned with determination. Then rise higher, Becky. Let your light be so bright that their lies look like shadows no one believes. Rebecca inhaled deeply, nodding. Yes. I won't let her destroy me again. Not this time. That night, Rebecca lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The pain of Timothy's face, the sting of Felicia's rumors, all churned in her chest. But then she remembered her girls at the boutique, their hopeful smiles, their laughter. She remembered Fred's words, you're not just building a business. You're building an empire. She whispered into the darkness, her voice trembling but resolute. I won't be dragged down. Not by Timothy's regrets. Not by Felicia's lies. My story is bigger than them. And with that, she turned her pain into quiet determination. The past had returned, but it would not win. Rebecca was in her boutique one warm afternoon, bent over her sketchbook, when Hannah rushed in, waving an envelope. Sister Rebecca, you won't believe this. Rebecca looked up, curious. What is it? Hannah handed her the golden envelope. Open it. Rebecca carefully unsealed it, her eyes scanning the letter inside. Her hands shook as she read. We are pleased to inform you that you have been nominated for the International Award for Excellence in Fashion Design. Your unique African-inspired collection has captured the world's attention. Rebecca gasped, pressing the paper against her chest. An international award? Yes. Hannah cried, clapping her hands. You're going to Paris. The world is about to know your name. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, from ashes, to this. God, you are faithful. The days that followed were filled with excitement. The girls at Becca's Touch buzzed with energy, helping Rebecca prepare samples of her best work to take abroad. Fred walked into the shop one evening, smiling proudly. You've come a long way, Rebecca. Remember when you were scared to dream big? Now the world is knocking at your door. Rebecca smiled through her nerves. It feels like a dream. I just hope I don't fail. Fred placed a firm hand on her shoulder. You won't. You're not going there to beg for recognition. You're going to show them what you've already built. Hold your head high. Hannah chimed in from across the room. Yes, sister. Walk into that hall like a queen. Rebecca chuckled softly. With both of you behind me, I think I can. Paris glittered with lights that evening. The award ceremony was held in a grand hall, filled with designers, celebrities, and journalists from around the world. Rebecca stood backstage in a simple but elegant gown she had designed herself, her heart racing. When her name was announced as the winner of the International Award for Excellence in Fashion Design, Rebecca froze for a moment, stunned. The audience applauded, flashes of cameras filled the room. Hannah, sitting in the crowd, jumped to her feet, cheering at the top of her voice. That's my sister. Rebecca slowly walked to the stage, her legs trembling. She accepted the shining trophy, and as she stood at the podium, she saw thousands of eyes staring at her. For a second, memories of Felicia's betrayal, Timothy's abandonment, and the years of pain rushed back. Her throat tightened. But then she took a deep breath and began to speak. I stand here tonight, Rebecca began, her voice shaking, not as someone who has had an easy life, but as someone who was once broken. Years ago, I was betrayed by people I loved most. I lost everything, my savings, my dreams, even my dignity. The hall fell silent. I cried for weeks. I thought my life was over. But I learned something. When people take everything from you, they cannot take your spirit unless you give it to them. I refused to stay down. I picked up a needle and thread, and I began again. One stitch at a time. One dress at a time. Her eyes scanned the audience, her voice growing stronger. Pain taught me resilience. Betrayal taught me wisdom. And failure taught me that I can rise again. Today, Becca's Touch is not just a fashion brand. It is a family of women who, like me, were told they would never succeed. But together, we are rewriting our stories. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she lifted the trophy. This award is not mine alone. It belongs to every woman who has ever been broken, betrayed, or forgotten. You can rise again. Your pain can become your power. The audience erupted in thunderous applause. Some stood on their feet, clapping with tears in their eyes. Cameras flashed, journalists scribbled furiously, and Rebecca's name began to trend worldwide that very night. Back in Nigeria, Timothy sat in a dingy apartment, the television flickering. He leaned forward, his jaw tight, as Rebecca's speech played. She forgave us in front of the world, he muttered bitterly. His chest ached with regret. He had thrown away a gem for greed, and now the whole world celebrated the woman he once had. Across town, Felicia sat in a friend's house, drinking nervously. Her eyes widened as Rebecca's face filled the TV screen, radiant, holding the trophy. No, no, no. Felicia hissed. She threw her glass against the wall, shattering it. She was supposed to fail. She was supposed to beg me for help. But instead of failure, Rebecca was now an international icon. Felicia's hands shook as she watched the crowd cheer for the very woman she had tried to destroy. When Rebecca returned home with the award, her boutique was overflowing with well-wishers. The girls sang, danced, and drummed in celebration. Customers poured in, placing orders just to own something from the hands of a champion. Fred stood beside her, smiling. Do you see now? This is bigger than you ever dreamed. Your story has become hope for millions. Rebecca nodded, tears in her eyes. Yes. And this is just the beginning. My empire is not built on revenge or greed. It is built on resilience, faith, and love. That is something they can never take away. Hannah threw her arms around her sister, laughing and crying at once. I told you, you'd walk like a queen. And now the whole world sees it too. Rebecca held her award close, her voice quiet but firm. The past tried to break me, but God turned it into my power. From ashes, He gave me an empire. And at that moment, she knew the scars would always remain, but they no longer hurt. They were her crown now. Rebecca had become more than a designer. She was a symbol of hope. And her light was only beginning to shine. The cafe was almost empty that afternoon when Felicia walked in, her once polished heels now scuffed, her once glittering dress now faded. She clutched her bag tightly, her hands trembling. Across the street, a large billboard shone brightly. Becca's Touch, new collection launching worldwide. Felicia swallowed hard. That name haunted her every day. Rebecca's face, Rebecca's success, Rebecca's empire. She had thought Rebecca would stay broken forever. She had thought betrayal had destroyed her. But now, years later, Felicia was the one standing in rags, desperate for scraps. Rebecca was in her boutique office, signing documents for a new branch opening in London, when Hannah walked in. "Sister Rebecca," Hannah said cautiously. "There's someone here asking to see you." Rebecca looked up. "Who?" Hannah hesitated. "Felicia." Rebecca froze, her pen pausing mid-signature. Slowly, she set it down. "Felicia." "Yes, she says she wants to talk." Rebecca inhaled deeply, steadying herself. "Let her in." When Felicia entered, Rebecca almost didn't recognize her. The proud sparkle in her eyes was gone, replaced with exhaustion. Her clothes were cheap imitations of what she used to wear. "Rebecca," Felicia's voice broke. I need your help." Rebecca leaned back in her chair, her face unreadable. "Help?" "Yes," Felicia said quickly, tears brimming in her eyes. "I've lost everything. The businesses collapsed, the friends disappeared. I have nowhere else to go. I need a job. Please, let me work for you." Rebecca's jaw tightened. For a long moment, she said nothing, just studied the face of the woman who had once stolen everything from her. Before Rebecca could respond, another voice came from the doorway. "Rebecca." Her heart skipped. Timothy walked in, his hair graying, his suit worn out. He looked older, weaker, broken. He stepped closer, his voice low. "Rebecca, it's me. Don't shut me out. Remember what we once had? The love we shared before all this? We could start again. You and me. We were meant to be." Rebecca's stomach turned. She stood slowly, her hands trembling not with weakness, but with rising strength. She looked from Felicia to Timothy. The two people who had once destroyed her. Now standing before her, begging, empty, desperate. Her voice shook at first, then grew firm. "You know, you didn't just steal my money or my fiancé. You stole the weaker version of me. The girl who was too trusting. The girl who believed love meant blindness. The girl who thought friendship meant giving without boundaries." Felicia's tears streamed down her cheeks. Timothy opened his mouth, but Rebecca raised her hand. "No. Listen." Her voice was steel now. "That girl is gone. The woman standing before you today is someone you never saw coming. Stronger. Wiser. Unstoppable." Her eyes burned with tears, but she held her chin high. "You wanted me to stay in ashes. But I built an empire. You wanted me forgotten. But the world calls my name. You thought you destroyed me, but all you did was set fire to the version of me that was too weak to survive." Felicia sobbed openly now. "Rebecca, please." Rebecca shook her head slowly. "No, Felicia. I built this empire on truth, on resilience, on hope. There is no place for you here." She turned to Timothy. "And you chose betrayal over love. Don't you dare speak of what we once had. Whatever that was, it died the day you walked away." Timothy's lips trembled. "Rebecca." Rebecca stepped past both of them, her heels clicking against the polished floor. At the door, she paused, looking over her shoulder. "I forgive you both," she said softly. "But forgiveness doesn't mean welcome. Stay in the past where you belong." And with that, she walked out, leaving them standing in silence, drowning in their misery. Felicia sank to the floor, weeping uncontrollably. Timothy stood frozen, his pride shattered. For the first time, they truly saw what they had lost, not just money, not just status, but the woman who had become untouchable. They had stolen from her ashes. But she had risen as fire. And they could never touch her again. The world had changed, and so had Rebecca. Billboards across London, New York, Paris, Lagos, and Johannesburg bore her brand, Becca's Touch International. Her designs were on red carpets, in magazines, and at global fashion weeks. She had become a household name, a global icon. But more importantly, she had become a force for change. Rebecca was no longer alone. Over the years, Fred had been by her side not out of pity, not because she needed saving, but because he saw her worth. He had been her mentor, her friend, and eventually, her love. Their wedding was a simple but elegant ceremony, filled with joy and laughter. Hannah stood proudly as her maid of honor, tears streaming down her cheeks as Rebecca walked down the aisle. When the vows were exchanged, Fred whispered, "I didn't fall in love with your empire, Rebecca. I fell in love with the woman who built it." Rebecca smiled, her heart full. For the first time, love didn't feel like a trap. It felt like home. Years later, Rebecca returned to her hometown. But this time, she wasn't the broken girl who once walked with her head down. She arrived in a convoy, welcomed by crowds, reporters, and banners that read, "Welcome home, our daughter, our queen." The same neighbors who once mocked her now sang her praises. Children waved little flags with her logo. Women wept, reaching out to touch her hands, thanking her for the scholarships, training programs, and jobs she had created for them. Rebecca stood on a podium in the town square, Hannah and Fred by her side. She looked at the faces before her, the faces that once watched her humiliation, now watching her victory. Later that evening, after the celebrations ended, Rebecca slipped away quietly. She walked alone to the small house she had once lived in, the house where she had cried, where she had looked into the mirror and promised not to remain a victim. She stepped inside the empty room, her footsteps echoing. The old mirror was still there, dusty but standing. She looked into it, and for a moment, she saw not her present self, the Empire Queen, but the poor, heartbroken girl she once was. The girl with messy hair, swollen eyes, and a broken heart. Rebecca's throat tightened. Tears welled up. She whispered, "Thank you, for not giving up. Thank you for standing up, even when you were broken. You made me who I am today." Her reflection shimmered through her tears, but instead of weakness, she now saw strength, beauty, and resilience. Rebecca smiled softly, wiping her cheeks. From ashes, to empire. This is our story. And as she walked back out into the night, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself was applauding the girl who refused to stay broken. Rebecca Daniels was no longer the girl betrayed. She was the Empire Queen. Please don't forget to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe. It really means a lot to us. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to get more interesting stories like this.